Hello, hello, and welcome to Into the Multiverse. I am Rosie Sherry, your host, and today we have Adriana Vilela with us. She is Principal DevRel Advocate at Dynatrace. Hello, Adriana.
Hello, Rosie.
Welcome. We're slightly giggling because this was the third edit of the introduction, but I'm glad we finally got it right and nailed it. But yeah, Adriana, thank you so much for coming on and speaking with us today. For the benefit of the podcast listeners, would you like to tell us a bit about yourself and your background in tech and what you're up to these days?
Yeah, sure. So my background actually, it's funny that you mentioned that this is a podcast about testing. And one of my early roles right out of university was actually as a tester when
Amazing.
I joined Accenture as my very first full-time job. So I have felt the pain of being a tester. So my original goal out of university was to be a Java developer, and that is what I did actually for 16 years. But my very first role was to be placed on a testing team. And then after the Java stuff, I got into the wonderful world of DevOps. And then that was, I guess, my gateway drug into the world of like cloud native and Kubernetes. And I've gone back and forth between leadership roles and individual contributor roles. Before I became a developer advocate, I was actually managing two teams at Two Cows. And if you're old enough, it's that Two Cows, you know, the one for downloading free Windows software from way back when.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Wow. Although they're a domain wholesaler. They have also a spin-off company that does some like like mobile phone related stuff. But yeah, so I was managing like two teams, and one of my teams was an observability team. So that's how I officially got into observability. I was learning in public about observability as I was building up this team because I want to make sure like let's do right by my team and make sure I'm doing the right thing. And I asked lots of questions and just like blogged about the things that I was learning, caught the attention of my who would be my future manager at a couple of jobs ago, and they messaged me on Twitter and they said, "How would you like to do this as a real job?" And I'm like, nice. What? That's a job. So that was my first DevRel role. It was at Lightstep, which had been acquired by ServiceNow, and then that led to my current job at Dynatrace. So here I am.
That's super interesting. Just the roundabout way of how you kind of transition from Java developer.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, and maybe a little bit of testing. What year was the first role that you had?
2001.
Yeah, I'm quite similar. So it's like, yeah, I like to reflect back on like what life was like back then. I think 2001 or 2000. I think it might have been 2000 was my first step into tech, and it was into testing. So I was like 20, and just managed to blag my way slightly into a testing job. But yeah, it's been a good a quarter of a century, right? That's like
wild. And it's changed so much, right? I mean, like when I started, like, Google's still a few years old, right? And monoliths were like the it thing. And so like, Oracle was the big database of the time. Yeah. And it's just like incredible how much stuff has changed. Like, I think you talk to, us Gen Xers who have been around for long enough. It's like the job we started out with does not exist anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild. And in some sense, it feels like yesterday. And in another sense, it's like, oh my God, it's like just like changed so much.
Yeah, it feels like yesterday. Like when people say it's like 25 years has passed since I've graduated, I'm like, nah, that's a lie. That was yesterday. But also the 80s were yesterday, so I don't know.
Oh my. This is definitely starting to make us feel a bit old,
I
but
know, right?
I
Young.
guess when you've been around, you've seen things, right? You've
Yeah.
experienced things. I'm interested. Like one of my goals is like to try to build bridges, I guess, between within tech. I feel like a lot of us don't talk to each other enough. I feel that in the quality space at least. And I have a theory that if we all talked a little bit more, then we might be able to build better products. As I guess the ultimate goal or ultimate dream is, we should aspire to build better. And yeah, it's kind of like just a loose goal within my head that I think we could all try to do better with that. And just speaking to you now, like talking about like your experience, like from Java developer to DevOps and observability, and sometimes we can feel like we have to stay in our current roles, or like we have to stay in test, we have to stay in quality, and I think people sometimes feel a bit stuck. But the more I've been looking into it, like I've looked at like people who like started out in our community and they've gone beyond quality or beyond testing, or they're like engineering managers or DevRel people. So I think it's important to remember that. And like looking at your uh, history, I think that's quite it shows a similar pattern as well,
Yeah.
right? It's like careers aren't forever, but Java developer for quite a few years is interesting. But I guess like that pace of change has ramped up. Would you feel the same about that? Like you managed to stay as a Java developer for quite a few years, but
Yeah,
now
yeah, it's kind of wild
you're
that it was that long. I mean, I haven't touched Java for a while, and now if I were to look at it, I don't think I'd recognize it. Like, there's so much stuff that has happened since I was a Java developer. It's wild, and the community still like goes strong. Like, I've had a number of Java developers on my podcast, and it is such a strong, tight knit community. Like, it's kind of a lovely gathering place of geeks.
Where would you say like the Java developers, when you say it's a strong community, how would you say that they keep showing up, or what are the things that they keep doing to that makes you feel like they're still a strong community?
Well, I would say even by the sheer number of conferences, like I have
Okay.
learned that there are so many Java conferences out there and a lot of unconferences. And I think that's a really interesting model because it kind of takes the pressure out of your traditional conference, and it becomes almost this casual gathering spot for people to talk without the pressure of putting together a talk. So yeah, I think just the fact that there's that. I mean, so many Java related meetups, and I think ultimately as humans, we all long for somewhere to belong, and being able to find our community, whether it's like a Java community or an observability community or a testing community, somewhere where we can meet like-minded people who are just as excited about the tech as we are. I think that's so valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you've ended up like in the observability type space. Um, how would you describe what the observability space looks like at the moment? And how would you explain what observability is, like as maybe like a starting point, and
Yeah.
what's it looking like as a like an ecosystem or community at the moment?
So, observability, there are many competing definitions out there. My favorite one is from my good friend Hazel Weekly, which I think just encompasses it perfectly. So, it's the ability to ask meaningful questions, get useful answers, and act effectively on what you've learned. And as engineers, whether you are a software engineer or a test engineer or even, an SRE, we want to understand what the hell is going on with our systems when things break, right? So now the observability community, I would say, one of the things that I would say brings us together is OpenTelemetry. And I don't know if are you familiar with OpenTelemetry?
Not personally, no.
Okay. So OpenTelemetry is basically an open source standard for instrumenting your application. So basically emitting like signals, your traces, logs, and metrics in a standard way. So there's a standard format, there's a standard protocol for doing so. It's open source, and before OpenTelemetry came along, there was basically if you were an observability company, i.e., an observability company really is basically an observability vendor is essentially a fancy database with a front end that allows you to interpret your observability data. That's all it is at the end of the day. That is but it, don't underestimate what it can do because of that description. But before the different observability vendors and the precursor to observability was monitoring, so a real like focus on metrics and logging to a lesser extent. If you wanted to use any of the previous monitoring vendors, you had to. They provided their own vendor-specific SDKs for instrumenting your code. So if you had vendor X and you wanted to switch over to vendor Y, you would have to basically rip out all of that old code, re-instrument it. So now you're introducing new technical debt into your code, which that's going to be super fun, right? Because instrumentation is code. So then that becomes less of an incentive to switch vendors. You can't break up with them as easily. But with OpenTelemetry, all of the major observability vendors have come together and said, hey, we're going to create this shared standard. We are all working together towards the same goal. We want to make this happen and make it successful because, two heads are better than one. And so because of that, because it has the support of all the major observability vendors, now if you want to break up with your vendor, it becomes a lot easier because you don't have to retool to be able to do that. You just point your configuration to a different destination. Now there are other repercussions because you're switching vendors. You're basically getting used to a new front end and all that stuff, new dashboards, new querying languages. But at least a lot of that effort of having to like re-instrument the code, introducing that new technical debt, that stuff goes away. So that's what OpenTelemetry gives us. It allows us to instrument our code. It transmits the telemetry data. It allows you to process the telemetry data. So, for example, something that's really important, especially when we're dealing with testing and otherwise, is being able to mask PII data, right? Because if you are trying to figure out, hey, what happened in production, you need a production data dump. You don't want that PII data in your systems, right? Because that can be dangerous, or even like transmitting it to your observability backend. You definitely don't want that PII data in that backend. So having that ability to do those transformations and masking and batching and filtering data, that's extremely important. So that's basically OpenTelemetry in a nutshell. And OpenTelemetry is a project of the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, the same foundation that Kubernetes is under. And we are the second highest velocity project of the CNCF, Cloud Native Computing Foundation. And we just reached graduated status, which essentially means that we are open for prime time, baby. We are considered stable enough, and there's like some good solid use cases to give organizations that were maybe like, oh, I don't know if I should use OpenTelemetry, gives them the confidence like this thing is ready for prime time. So there's a huge community around observability and OpenTelemetry. Definitely a lot more in the sort of cloud native side of things, in the SRE space. because I think observability it tends to be associated a lot with 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 SRE, because it's like, oh, something happens in prod, the SRE is going to go and take a look. But when you think about it, and I gave a talk about this recently, observability is a team sport. It is a concern for developers because developers are the ones who are instrumenting the code, adding those traces, logs, and metrics to their code so that that information becomes available to the SREs down the line. But also it's super useful for testers, because when, especially if you're doing exploratory testing, for example, when you're running those exploratory tests and something goes wrong, you as a tester can take that telemetry data, look at it through your observability backend, and say, oh, okay, I found a bug. I know what the bug is. I know what caused it. You can go back to the developer and say, hey, I think I know the problem. And similarly, if you're going through, you have a test that fails, you're going through stuff and you're like, I can't figure out what it is. You can also go back to the developer and say, I think we're missing telemetry. So then telemetry becomes a quality gate before you enter the testing phase. And so now we have an opportunity to improve quality because of OpenTelemetry.
It's interesting. Telemetry as a quality gate is definitely interesting to think about. How have you seen that being implemented or used, I guess, in real life?
I have not seen that part yet.
Okay.
We are seeing developers caring more about instrumentation. So, for example, I went to I want to say April. Yeah, end of April, I went to DevOps Greece, which is a Java developer conference, and my co-speaker and I gave a talk about the importance of observability for developers and what they can do, like tips on instrumenting their code, because there's this tendency of like, oh my God, you're asking me to do like another thing. So instrumenting, like why it's important, effective ways to instrument your code, and then even some desktop, like open source desktop tools that you can install locally so that, you can see like your telemetry and use that for troubleshooting. Obviously you always have the option of sending it to a SaaS provider, observability vendor or whatever. But if you want to just, developers love to just tinker around in their own local environments, that kind of gives them that extra little bit of control so that they can do that. So we're seeing more of a conversation shifting around that. I will keep preaching about observability as a quality gate for testers. I feel like that's an area that we need to crack into because I don't think there's enough conversation around that.
I would agree. I'd love to learn more about that, generally speaking. Sometimes I wonder, is it just because I'm not paying enough attention, or are we just not talking about it enough? But definitely, like, part of the reason of this podcast and for me reaching out to other people is like, how can we connect better? How can we explore what quality in relation to other roles, such as observability, actually means, and what are the things that we can put into place? And I know some quality people have moved from quality into DevOps. Quite a few people have. So there is probably like opportunity to kind of explore more, discover more what they bring in. Just like you bring your dev background into your current roles. So say if people have started out as testing and quality people and are now in DevOps, what does that look like? What's the work they're doing? And I know, for example, like Ash Winter does a lot of stuff. He's kind of DevOpsy, I think, in the testability space. So he's written a lot about testability and ensuring that the systems we build enable us to build, to test.
Yeah.
So there's probably a whole ton of things that we could create awareness around, but at the moment I feel like it's a big gap. I guess I'd love to explore more, and even like when you're talking about open telemetry and the standards that you're creating together. I'm not sure how long that has taken, but then I kind of relate it back to like the testing space, and like there's a real lack of that kind of unity to, I guess, collaborate to create and work with those standards with either automated tools or test management tools or all the tools that we use. No one really talks about standards in testing, I don't
Yeah, yeah,
think.
yeah.
Um,
It's really hard, right, to create standards and not having. And then because there's that XKCD comic where it's like I'm going to create a standard to like squash all the other standards, but then all we end up doing is creating more standards. And OpenTelemetry has finally proven that wrong, because it's like, we had all these standards and then this standard was created and it's like, that's it, no more, which is kind of awesome. But I think that's more of a rarity than anything. And I
yeah.
think it just goes to show creating standards is really hard. Like OpenTelemetry has been around since 2019, and it was actually the result of the merger between two other open source projects: Open Census, which was from like Google open source side of things, and then Open Tracing, which was another CNCF project. And they were merged. Both of those projects were retired in favor of OpenTelemetry. And OpenTelemetry does a really very thoughtful job of keeping things vendor neutral, making sure that there isn't like a single vendor who's like, oh, I am the monarch of OpenTelemetry and I will direct how everything goes. So that's done very intentionally. There's a lot of work put in behind the scenes to ensure that vendor neutrality is maintained and honored. And I think because the community was created with such intentionality, and continues, like there's a continued effort to maintain that, which, I mean, it's exhausting, but we see that in the success. I think that's why it continues to be that way. And I think that just proves that building community is just freaking hard. So hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Because my mind goes to two places. One is like the social networking angle of standards and how everything's locked in, right? And
Yeah.
like algorithm based, and everything's fragmented as a result. Like, like people don't want to be on X or Twitter, so they've gone elsewhere. But and then you get like Blue Sky, building their protocol, which is great. But then it's just hard and it's slow and it's like can't even be bothered. And then you have the likes of LinkedIn, which it's just the algorithms are terrible. And like all I can think of is like, well, all we need is just RSS and that's fine. We've got to stop but all these big platforms have stopped building with that, right? And
Yeah.
a lot of people don't even know what RSS is
I
anymore.
know, right?
Like, what?
I know. Sign of the times.
Yeah. And then like in the testing space, I guess like there's Jason Huggins who's building Vibium, which is like an AI testing tool, and he was one of the founders of Selenium back in the day.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
Yeah, but like it's almost like it feels like he's like the only one pushing for that. Really, he's like I don't know the full story, so I don't really want to say too much. And it gets whilst I've listened to some of the things that he's doing, it gets a bit technical and like overwhelming. But yeah, he's pushing for standards with AI in testing, which I don't think anyone else is. And I think, don't quote me on it, but I think like none of the other tools are really considering that. And yeah, it just feels like perhaps a bit of a battle between the tools rather than collaborating to think about, well, what is actually the best for the testing space? Does it make sense that we're all competing and we have to like shift tools constantly, and the test debt or the tech debt or whatever kind of debt you want to call it, quality debt, just feels massive constantly. But perhaps more with AI coming in, right? It's like, what AI tool do you choose? It gets even more overwhelming these days, where the testing tools are shifting to AI, but it feels like harder and harder to perhaps make a decision. Which one do you go with, because if they're all
Yeah.
proprietary, and you choose the wrong one, then it's like that's an expensive mistake. I don't know what kind of thoughts do you have on quality and observability stroke AI? What kind of things are you feeling or seeing at the moment?
Ooh. I think in terms of quality and observability, I think we can extend it even to like just writing software in general, where so many organizations are pushing their employees to be AI first without too much guidance on what that means. And because AI assisted coding makes it so much easier to write code, there's this tendency of, well, I mean, we see it all over the place. There's an increase in the generation of slop. And so organizations are, I would say, at a crossroads because there's this motivation to produce more, faster, faster, faster. And yet there's talk of like human in the loop, as if we're almost like a glorified checkmark giver. And I think it's got to be not so much human in the loop, but having the accountable human, the one who is truly making sure that the code being generated is good. It means making sure that you have an understanding of the language that you're writing, because I think AI is giving us permission to slack in terms of just being proficient in a language. I think understanding what your AI assistant is generating for you is important, because again, we can be very lazy. Oh, great, it generated some code for me. I'm not entirely sure what it does, but I'm sure it's fine. And being able to question what your AI assistant is doing, because our AI assistants have a massive amount of confidence, very misplaced confidence. And it's so confident that it throws us off. I mean, myself included. I catch myself sometimes thinking, oh yeah, my AI assistant knows better than me. I will trust it. And then you'll catch an error and you're like, oh, wait, no, 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 no. We got to pull back. So I think we have to keep all those things in mind, because otherwise it will cause our quality to suffer. I'm sure we are already seeing our quality suffering because of that. We're also, AI assisted coding has also made everyone into a developer, even people who have never touched code before. And it's emboldened them to produce public sites in some cases, that are not battle tested, resilient. And that can cause a lot of problems, right? Because there might be security breaches. They don't know how to handle people's personal data. They don't realize the things that have to be done so that you don't open yourself up to attacks. So it's this false sense of security that it gives us that ends up biting us in the butt in the end. So we need to like take a minute and think about it. And I think some companies are even realizing that a little bit, because we saw these mass layoffs at one point. And then because it's like, oh, AI is going to automate all the things. It'll just replace like all these developers. And then we're seeing, well, first of all, this thing's not necessarily cheaper than those developers we just laid off. And I would even dare say testers. I'm sure testers have been caught in this crossfire too. And then now they're realizing, oh, you know what, we absolutely still do need humans. So now we're seeing a lot of companies rehiring, maybe not to the same levels, and I don't think we'll ever see it to those same levels, because I think that's just the nature of automation. Every time we see a major automation, we will see a big drop. But then it's always like too big a drop, and then we have a course correction, and it's like, okay, yeah, we actually can't lay off as many people as we thought. We actually need those humans. So we are starting to see a bit of a course correction. We're seeing, I think, a huge emphasis in like just understanding architecture, versus, like less mastery of the language. Although I still think the language proficiency is extremely important. But there's definitely, like, we're shifting from being builders to architects. It's a different type of creativity, and it's an important skill to have nonetheless. And I think even for testing, you are a test architect, not necessarily running the tests or writing the tests yourself. So I could see that as a shift as well with AI. But we always need to be vigilant, because that little bugger lies, and we can't let it catch us, catch us off guard.
Would you say architecture is the same as orchestration, or is there a difference between that? I hear the orchestrate term thrown around a lot, and I'm wondering, they're probably related, right? But not quite the same.
I'd say related but different, because architecture is really about thinking about like your overall system, all the components, how they interact, how data flows from A to B, and then the orchestration is how are you going to, especially around like when we're talking about doing stuff with AI agents, how are we going to get all these having like the different like moving parts, producing the things from your architecture, making them a reality.
Yeah.
And in the same way that a project manager would work, right? I guess the project manager is like your orchestrator of the project in a sense. And so now we've got these orchestration tools for AI agents, for example.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. It's like new terms, but the same thing, kind of.
Yeah. Well, even, I was talking to my husband about this yesterday. He's also in tech, and he was saying, a lot of people like keep treating AI coding assistants as like junior developers, but maybe we should think of them more as like pair programming. Except the difference is it's pair programming that works, because we're both not huge fans of pair programming. I've only successfully pair programmed with one person in my life that was not my husband. My husband and I should never pair program, and that's super okay. But yeah, I've only had one successful pair programming experience, and I feel like with AI as your pair programmer, I feel like that would be a much more successful symbiotic relationship, because it would tend to listen to you more, and you're not having to like battle egos. Like, for example, with my one successful pair programming experience, my programming partner was cool with the fact that like I like to be hands on keyboard and writing stuff out, and he's the one who's like he was architecting and he was happy to be hands off keyboard, but also like he would and then like we would riff off each other on the architecture, but I was the one who's always coding, and so that was okay. that was like super okay with him. I don't think I could do that with anyone else. So
it's interesting though, because like you say, pair programming, like in the quality world, there's pair testing. I raised the idea of pair prompting as well. Like if you're prompting, why not pair prompt? Which is another interesting angle. But it almost feels like, because like I've never really done pair testing or programming or anything, but I have, like I do pair with AI, I guess, in some sense. And like you say, that feels good, but I've always felt like perhaps a bit inadequate that the idea of pair programming sounds great, but do I really want to do it in practice, or is it feasible in practice, or for remote, does it work as well remotely, possibly even better remotely? I don't know. Just I guess like the idea of pair programming is something that I'm so familiar with that I feel like I should be experienced with it, at least from a testing perspective, like pair testing, for example. But I've never actually done it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we talk about it, and it's almost like we talk about it and then we assume others have done it, or it's this thing that everyone should adopt because, it's this great idea that we've spoken about. But then when we actually talk about it and we say, oh, we don't actually like doing it, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, to me, that's interesting in the fact that when we gather as community, we share ideas and good ideas, and some ideas take off. But is that the reality of how we actually operate day to day? And I would argue that, it feels like stuff like pair programming is something that's spoken about, but not done nearly as much as it's spoken about. There's like this imbalance of it's loud or people are talking about it, therefore it's assumed that it's practiced.
Yeah,
But
I
what is
feel
that reality? I don't know. It's just like, I don't have the data, any kind of data to back that up. It's just like when I have conversations like this, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. You don't actually like it. If you don't like it, I bet you there's a lot of other people around us that don't like it either.
I agree. I agree. I don't have any data to back it either, but just from talking to various people about pair programming, they're like allergic to it. And because I think it's got to be with a very like you can't have the same type of personality and mentality to pair with you. Like it has to be complementary and, a yin and yang. And how often will you find that? Like I know there were companies out there that where pair programming was like a part of the company culture. And God, I would hate to be put in that position where it's like, oh, you're paired with this person who you don't really know and you're expected to produce code together. And that just feels very weird to me. Um, I feel like programming is a very personal sort of journey, not a not a fishbowl experience. Like even swarm programming, I've seen the videos on swarm programming. I'm like, oh, just hell no. Like who invented that? Like just please go away. Like I can't. I need usually like when I'm troubleshooting, I need quiet. I need peace. I need solitude. And I will only ask for help if I'm like, I've hit a point where I'm like, I've exhausted all possibilities or like, I'm really on a time crunch. I got to figure this thing out. But even that, like, I wouldn't say that's a pair program. It's a pair troubleshooting session.
Yeah. One of the colleagues was speaking with a community member recently, and they were just talking about the idea of like conversations, like quality, conversational quality. It's
Mm-hmm.
like this idea of simply just encouraging conversations at the right time to talk about the things, in helpful, useful, collaborative ways,
Yeah.
and just developing good skills around that. And that it just reminded me of like what you were saying is like some it can be as simple as that. It's like it's good to talk, right? It's like it's as
Yeah.
simple as like, but it's like let's find the ways that help us talk, and let's be mindful and respectful of like our roles, especially when we're, I guess, crossing between different roles and trying to get stuff done. It's not always easy to communicate all the things, I guess. I had one question for you around like AI slop came up.
Mm-hmm.
How have you seen like AI slop in the observability world? Like, how has that been appearing or frustrating you, or what kind of concerns do you have related to that?
I think the biggest concern, especially when working in the open source world, is how like so many projects are being overwhelmed by AI generated pull requests. And it's a problem of volume and it's a problem of like having to review the stuff that isn't, when you start going into it and you're like, what is this thing that was created? So now like your brain's hurting a bit from like reading bad code, right? So I think I think the challenge, especially for like open source project maintainers, is what kinds of guidelines and rules do you put in place to ensure that there is accountability when a pull request is submitted? How do you ensure that? So, like for example, I think I want to say Kubernetes a few weeks ago came out with like a policy of just making sure that, hey, if it's an AI generated pull request, like you got to make sure that the human behind the AI generated pull request is has some sort of accountability, and has done. I don't quote me on this, but I believe it also includes like making sure that they've done their due diligence and gone through the pull request to make sure that the thing that's being submitted isn't crap. Because otherwise, now you're like it's like doing a half-ass. Like imagine you're a reporter writing an article and you do a half-assed job writing the article thinking, well, that's fine because my editor will clean it up. Like, that's not cool. It's like
Yeah,
you barely made an effort and now you're expecting other people to clean up your crap. But imagine that in like high volume. God,
yeah.
that's awful. Like,
There's
and
been
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and there's been a few open source projects. Was it Cal or the calendar that went closed source because of I guess that there's other aspects of AI being able to just clone all the code and stuff
Oh
like
yeah,
that. But
that's another thing. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
What stops AI from cloning a project and then just doing whatever, like commercializing it or whatever, right?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
But what can you do about that? Because I like in the community world, so like separately, like I have Rosieland where I write about community and I actively research all the things, and I've gotten to a point where I'm just like I have to put up these I call them like layers of care
hmm,
boundaries where we're a small team and like we can't accommodate everyone. Increasingly, we can't accommodate people and what they're submitting to within the community or how they want to participate, and as a result, we can't attend to like our best customers because we're being dragged back somewhat by all these people that don't really care about our community. They just want to, some often a tick box exercise, or
yeah,
it's spam, or it's marketing, or it's there's all sorts of reasons, right? And I think it like almost holds communities back where we're under so much pressure that we have to accommodate everyone that we end up not accommodating anyone.
yeah.
And I think the problem's always been there, but now it's just amplified
It really
because like
is.
yeah, because it's not new. It's
No,
just more. It's just like at a totally different scale. And Reddit, like there's so much spam, AI slop everywhere. It's just like yeah. I've never been a fan of Reddit, but it's like I
yeah,
definitely
yeah,
don't go there anymore because I'm just like I just can't be bothered. Like you don't know who you're
yeah,
talking to, and only sometimes you might, but it's just like I've got one life. Why am I gonna spend it questioning whether who I'm engaging with and what I'm engaging with is true? But yeah, I guess with the open source angle, are there any like boundaries or anything that people can realistically do, or is it a case of just coping and going through to use AI on the AI submissions? To,
I,
I
yeah, that's a good point. I think we have to be very intentional and rigorous about like the pull requests that we review. I think what Kubernetes community did on making sure that there's accountability for those AI generated pull requests. The human that was responsible for that for the AI generated pull requests has to be accountable and aware, because projects like Kubernetes and OpenTelemetry, these are things that are used in production, and so imagine you let some crappy AI pull request through that like causes some major like vulnerability issue or whatever. God, I mean, and I know these projects have like rigorous testing in place as well as part of their CI/CD process, but still, like when you're overwhelmed by that much volume, and crap, I mean, the volume part just means that you slow everything down, right? Because then the stuff that really deserves to get looked at isn't getting looked at because you got this crap clogging the pipeline. So putting in guardrails to protect against that, I think, becomes extra important, especially as you said for the check mark chasers, because like those aren't the people we want. We want the people who are contributing because they genuinely care about the community, about what we produced, about the quality.
Which is going to make it harder, right, for people to
Yeah.
actually contribute.
Yeah, exactly. It becomes a huge turnoff because you're like, well, if it's only AI stuff, I don't want anything to do with that. Yeah, which it just destroys. It can destroy a community in the blink of an eye that you spent years building up. Sucks
Yeah.
if it comes to that. So that's why I think communities are being very protective over that sort of thing.
Yeah. How do you think they can be protective?
I think just by having like very strict rules about what like about where the content comes from, having the accountability, having I think also like you can even have like a terms of use or terms of contribution, right? We all like for OpenTelemetry, we all have to like sign one of those, and basically if it's found that you're violating the terms of contribution, well, guess what? PRs from that person violating the terms, well, sorry, you're getting the boot. Those aren't coming through. You almost have to like have to find a way to filter out the crap. Is it through AI filtering crap generated by AI? I don't know. I mean, this makes me think of another thing, which like I saw on LinkedIn. I can't remember the name of the headline specifically, but there is literally a job now of like people who are basically professional AI slop cleaners, because there's so much crap out there. Like
yeah, I mean,
job now, I'm like, sign me up.
it's almost therapeutic, right? It's like you want some
yeah, I'll bet,
therapy.
right? Yeah, I agree.
It's crazy, right? But it's like I don't know. It's like we partially deal with that at MOT as well, and we're trying to think about it's like what are the things that we can protect against. But then I guess the other angle that we're trying to think of is like actually how can we change so that we produce something better?
Mm-hmm.
Like is the old way of for example doing talks the best way to get good content from people? So like the more traditional ways, conferences and talks or online talks with especially during like COVID, so like online talks became a lot more popular.
Yeah.
But now we're thinking actually conversations are really good because they can't fake it. With talks you can't really fake it, but with article submissions, I think that's probably our hardest part at the moment. Is like AI slop kind of seeps in, even from the good people. They think that it's
so
okay,
true.
but it's not okay. But when you have a face-to-face conversation, like even virtual like this, is that you can't fake it, right? It's like we're talking right now, we're laughing, we're riffing, and it's like you can't fake it. This is 100% authentic. So it's almost like we have to find ways to change to be more human. Maybe the human aspect comes more into it, so that we can protect ourselves from parts of AI, not all of AI, but the parts that like cause the problem. So yeah, that's where my mind has been for this year, I guess, is like trying to figure out, well, is this actually creating any value, and are forums actually as valuable as we think they are if we're spending so much time moderating them and trying to keep AI slop out? It's like, what's the point of that if it's not working for us right now? It's like, what can we do instead? It doesn't mean we give up, but it's like we change, and what does that change look like? And I don't know.
I know, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Would you have any AI-free forums, right? It's like real humans only, please. Which is interesting too, because I'm even seeing some adverts out there where it's like, no, it's like powered by humans, because I think people are so over the, oh my God, will you just give me a person to talk to? I don't want to talk to a chatbot. And to your point about, the conferences and the face-to-face conversations, I think those are like so important right now, because as you said, it's those human connections are important. Like for me, my favorite part of attending a conference is the hallway track, just getting to chit chat with people, people that I know, or meeting new people and getting their thoughts and take on stuff, and just different viewpoints and things. And I think that's so valuable, and you can't underestimate the value of that human connection.
yeah, I agree. But yeah, Adriana, it's been great to chat. Do you have any final thoughts to wrap up? Anything that we didn't cover that you think is worth highlighting?
Yeah, I'll say this: observability is a team sport, and I would say, especially for the testers out there, um, get, if you're not familiar with observability and OpenTelemetry, this is a great opportunity for you to familiarize yourself with it, because I think it can really add superpowers to your job. I will also say, please AI responsibly, everyone. I think it can be a very useful tool, but let's not let AI take the place of our brains.
Absolutely. Do you have one or two resources that you would recommend for a beginner in observability?
Yeah. So, as a shameless self promotion, for anyone who has an O'Reilly subscription and likes video courses, I actually have a video course on OpenTelemetry. It's an introduction to observability with OpenTelemetry. So that's a great start. I will always also promote the OpenTelemetry docs at opentelemetry.io, because that is the source of truth for open telemetry documentation, and it's a great way to just get started with the community and join. Also, if you want to, if you're interested in open telemetry, join CNCF Slack. If you Google CNCF Slack Community Inviter, that'll give you a link to how to join that Slack community. And any channel in there that starts with OTel in CNCF Slack, OTel dash, is an open telemetry channel, and you can just pop in and see what people are talking about. You don't have to necessarily participate, just observe.
And that's a good point to end on. Just observe.
Pun not intended, but worked out.
Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the multiverse.